Hi everyone, so yesterday I played some really weird build. I had this idea for a while already on my rogue. I wanted to do a poison trap focused build. So pure poison trap damage, full dot damage, and basically no other attacks. So that was the idea, and I wanted to see if that actually works. I had this in the back of my mind already for a while, and yesterday I actually put it together. I have a planner here in case you're interested, and well, I can tell you, it's actually not really that crazy. I mean, you can see me here, I was doing a tier 82, which is probably not even that terrible in the grand scheme of things. My setup was also fairly unoptimized. I did not have like the right items, and some of my glyphs were not leveled, so I expect I could be something like around 30 to 50% stronger, and I could also have significantly more defense. So technically this build is actually somewhat viable to push into the 90s or so in Nightmare Dungeons, which probably puts it still in like the top 20% of builds or so in the game right now, I guess. The main issue with this build is it's not really useful for anything besides Nightmare Dungeon pushing. It is very slow paced, so you cannot like farm with this or anything like that, because the main combo revolves around you using concealment, stealthing into a pack, and then throwing down 4 poison traps at once. And then you just wait for the poison traps to do their thing and slowly apply the dot. And then you have to wait like another 10 seconds for the dot to actually do its thing. So you can see that this is like not really good for anything that is like farming. But I do have to say that the playstyle itself was actually kind of curious, and definitely something entirely different from anything else that the game has. And if you enjoy something like this, like a stealthy trap kind of playstyle, it might actually be something worth trying if you want to do some higher Nightmare Dungeons. Now, there are way better builds than that on the rogue. Like, I've done tier 100 on 3 different builds now, and yeah, it's just not that great. But if you're not really try-harding, it might be something. And I can talk you through the setup here a little bit in case you want to try this out for yourself, so that you understand what I made here. So it's a bit weird. So first of all, we don't have a core skill. So you saw here in the clip, maybe I was using penetrating shot. I was experimenting a little bit, but I dropped that later, and we actually went with a puncture instead. So the main reason for that was the penetrating shot was just there as like kind of like a supporting option for the slow and the knockdown, but I realized that's actually relatively useless. And if you want slow, we can just as well use puncture anyway, and then we get vulnerable, and we also have an attack that we can continuously use so that we can proc exposure. So exposure, if you have played a trap rogue, death trap for example, you'll know this is a very powerful key passive. It gives you cooldown resets for both the poison trap and most importantly the death trap. Because we run preparation, you can use the death trap to reset all of your cooldowns. So the idea is you conceal in, you put down 4 poison traps with the infiltrator aspect. You can put 4 of them at once while in stealth, and then you come out of stealth, you press death trap, everything gets pulled into your poison traps, and you reset everything, and you can do the concealment poison trap combo again. So you have 8 of them active at a time, stacking that poison damage. So that is the main combo here, and then there's like a few other smaller things like the smoke grenade, just disabling enemies, gets a bit of extra damage. The puncture you can just spam for those exposure procs, and also just to get like a might buff for example and stuff like that. Then we have Shadow Step. I wasn't really sure what else to put there, honestly. It's just like another unstoppable really, because else you don't have any. So in case you get CC'd, you can get out, or you can do like a stun here and there. Kind of okay, but I tried Caltrops a little bit. I wasn't really a fan, and you could do dash if you want, but this is basically about it for like skills that exist on the rogue. If you don't use a core skill, and if you're already locked into a ultimate, and if you can't use imbuements either. So you see that we have literally all of the subterfuge, and then yeah, it's basically just this or that. I made the setup as tanky as possible because this was intended for high Nightmare Dungeon pushing. So this means 4 defensive aspects, that's Disobedience on the Amulet, we have Enshrouding, Might, Cheats. So in general, lots of defense. We have Amethysts in the weapons. 8% additive damage over time, man. Sick gems, yeah, sick. So, man, they are so bad, but this is what you have to use because there's no other option really. And we have stuff like Pentagon Greaves for the Frigid Finesse synergy. And then I have stuff like Rapid for a bit more attack speed, because why not? We have Smiting, we have Edge Masters, and we have Retribution with the stun damage. And Fists of Fate. So I tested this actually with the Poison Trap, and it does apply to the poison trap. So this is actually a 50% multiple gift damage increase if you have a perfectly rolled Fists of Fate. So this is actually a relatively nice item here for like the non-core skill builds. This is something I've talked about many times. I guess also on a sorcerer, you're gonna see this, that if you don't use a core skill and you don't lose +4 ranks to your core skill, this is actually pretty good. And the paragon setup looks like this. So we have a lot of poison synergies, most importantly. We have the tracker glyph for longer poisons. We have the snare glyph that gives you bigger traps and more trap damage. You have diminish for damage reduction and some stuff there. We have bane for the 10% chance to double your poison. We have versatility for the 50% extra damage for non-basic, non-core skills, so the poison trap. And then we have ambush for more trap damage. So the entire setup is revolving around this. We have 6 glyphs. And then there's like a bunch of stuff that I pick up on the way, like a bit of vulnerable damage, a bit of life and armor. And this is pretty much it. And the main reason why I wanted to try this is because I was a bit hopeful that we could make some non-crit kind of like full dot build in this game. I mean, there are these, like, for example, Twisting Blades, Poison Imbue variations, but generally they still also stack a lot of crit. So they get the synergies, so they still have more damage output. And I wanted to do just Poison Trap. And well, as I said, it kind of works, but yeah, I wouldn't really mind if this had something like 10 times the damage output or so. And it would actually be somewhat comparable to other rogue builds when it comes to pushing, at least. Now, I have no illusions, this is never going to be a farming build unless you do some major adjustments, and maybe you can include something like poison imbuement and then have like a core skill like Planetary Shot carry that imbuement, and it'll kind of synergize with the rest of the setup with the poison stuff. And you can maybe kind of like clean up small packs of that, and then you have the big poison trap combo for the elites and the boss and these kind of things. So I could imagine that, for example, if you go down to like a tier 60, tier 70 or so, you can probably kind of like one rotate elites for the most part with 4 poison traps or 8 poison traps. So they will just die in like a few seconds. And that will be okay, I guess. And then you can kind of like walk forward and clean up small trash monster packs with your poison imbuement. It's definitely something I want to come back to experiment more with, and maybe try to make such a farming setup, but at least for now, it's definitely in the meme territory, at least for rogue standards, I would say. Rogue is generally a relatively powerful class now, with basically most of the other top builds nerfed, and I expect more nerfs for top builds coming in the patch notes. And then a slight problem that this build has is that because of low damage output, it is actually relatively difficult to kill bosses. So you can stagger them very fast. As you can see here, the stagger bar goes up really quickly, and I wasn't even trying to optimize around that. And then you can kind of just throw down all the poison traps and then stagger that poison. But because it is so weak, yeah, it didn't really just like dot the boss to death, really. And then I had to kite him around and wait for my combos. And then depending on the boss, they may or may not stay in those poison traps when they're not staggered. So that definitely leads to some issues. And unfortunately, I actually never finished this 82 here because I had some bug at the end where the boss just reset in the middle of the fight. I don't know what happened there. But basically they just disappeared and respawned, and I was sitting there with like 1 potion left, and after that I basically just left. So unlucky, but I guess it would have been an 82 at least. I just want to share my experience with the build here, so let me know what you think. Maybe I also have some crazy weird build that you have made. I'll be quite curious to hear about it. Something like really out of the ordinary. And let's see if maybe eventually we're gonna get some kind of like viable setup with some buffs or some legendary powers down the line. That's it. Hope you liked this video, and see you guys next time.